Okay, all set? Ready?
Yep.
I'll just give a final check to the levels because now we are recording this.
All right. The levels should be all right because I don't think I've changed my position that much.
Yes.
Right.
Can you talk a little bit more, Ravi?
Okay, so the levels should be fine. You
Yes.
should get a good sound check and everything should be okay.
Oh, you're so pro in this. I'm so happy.
Sorry?
You're so pro in this.
I've come down in the studio so many times.
Yes, I'm sure.
I've sat at this table so many times.
Okay, Ji. So this is we'll start now. So this is me, Divya, recording for the oral histories, and I'm interviewing Ravi Parmar ji, and we will get to know a lot about his history, his life journey. Okay, Ravi ji. So let's start. Where were you born?
Born in India, right, in a place called Banstar. It was at my mother's ancestral village or ancestral town. It's just slightly north of Mumbai. And was brought up in India in a place called Ghatkopar. I don't know whether many of you know it, but Ghatkopar was quite small town, quite a small suburb of Mumbai. And what I remember about it was living in those not apartment blocks. It was like a one-storied row of houses all facing each other. It's called Naran Nagar. Right? That place doesn't exist anymore. It's been demolished and other things have been built up down there.
Have you been there recently?
No. The last time I went to that area was back towards probably about 1988, 99. And at that time, the area that I used to live in was destroyed. And the new flat, because the area that I used to live in was 3 rows of, the army quarters that you have single-storied houses, a few rows of it. And we had a house with 2 rooms there. And that was quite a lot of the houses had single rooms. Ours was slightly bigger with 2 rooms. And again, it was a time when we weren't that affluent at all anyway. So we were still struggling away. And the struggle actually comes in because of through my grandfather's time. My grandfather he lived in India, in Kutch, and he travelled to Uganda. He was quite a craftsperson, and at that time the British were building the railways. The British were building the railways, so my grandfather went over there and worked in Uganda. And he was quite a senior guy over there, and he worked for a few years. Together with my grandmother, he went there. There was just a couple on their own, and they had, I think they had 8 children, but 4 were born in Uganda, including my dad. That was back in my dad was born in 1929. Mm-hmm. So after the 4th child, my grandfather thought he'd made loads of money, and he came back to India. Built up a house in Kutch and said, right, we got plenty of money, no problem about worrying at anything. And we got our generations to come, they can live happily ever after. But like in traditional Indian sense, when you have more money, you have more friends in that time of in that little village. So relations from all over this place started coming in and asking for loans, etc. And my grandfather started giving the monies away to them. And none of them ever returned anything. So in no time, the money just disappeared. And there wasn't much left. So my dad, because from my grandfather's side, he had 3 sons and 5 daughters. So my dad, being the eldest son, at the age of 16, 15 or 14, 15, he started work. And he went off to Mumbai at the age of 16, started learning how to repair watches, etc. and he was the one who was the main breadwinner for the family.
So when you say family, does that include your grandfather and everybody in the family?
My grandfather died quite young, so I can't remember. I can never remember ever seeing my grandfather, even though I was born in 1956. I can never remember ever seeing my grandfather. So all I can remember is seeing is my grandmother, my aunts. My aunts got married off quite early on, and my father was the main breadwinner, and he collected the money and got them married. But we lived in Ghatkoper, and he said, right, okay, I need to create a future for myself. So although he worked at a watch repair shop in Dadar, he said, no, I'm going to go to Uganda because of his place of birth. And he said, and we knew a couple of people there. So he said, I'm going to go there and try and make some money and call the people over. So he went over there when I was only little at that time. I can remember him coming over to Ghatkoper a few times when I was only about 3-4 years old. So I don't know what age I was when he emigrated to Uganda. But he left my mum and my brothers and my other brother and the rest of the sisters and his mother, my grandmother, back in Ghatkoper. And he used to send the money over, and that's how we lived. And my uncles then started working a little bit, but they weren't very good with the money side, so there was enough money. So we stayed in that small house. We went off to, when I was about 8, he called me and my younger brother over for us to get a better life in Uganda. Yet he still used to send monies over to his brothers and sisters. By that time, they were all, my uncle was married. My youngest uncle, he never married, and he died early on. My mum also had TB at that time, so she was coming in and out of hospitals in Mumbai. But he said, well, we can get some treatments done over here in Uganda. Come on over and let's see what happens. So we went over. All of us went over to Uganda back in 1964, when I was about 8 years old. And her TB didn't improve much, and still was coughing away and so on. And the treatment over there in Uganda wasn't as great as it was in India. So she said she'll go back. She went back to India. Said okay. So she took my younger brother back to India, and I stayed with my father back in Uganda. The two of us were staying together, and I was only about 8-9 years old. And they went off to India. About a couple of months later, my mum dies.
When you were in Uganda with
When
your
I was in
father?
Uganda.
Okay.
When I was in Uganda with my father, it was quite funny because my father actually worked in a watch repair shop, and there was this Greek lady in the shop who did some tea leaf reading. So my dad said, oh, that's interesting. I'll come over. So he went over to her place and did the tea leaf readings. And she looked at the tea leaves, made whatever the mixture is, concoction, and then she started reading the tea leaves. And in that tea leaf reading, she said, I can see, she said a lot of things about my dad's life and his future and so on. And in that tea leaf reading, she said, I can see your wife lying dead at the moment.
This was when she was still in Uganda?
No, when she had moved over to India.
And she was still alive?
No, she was in India, and because the communication at that time wasn't that great. You didn't have telephones that much, as much available as you have nowadays. So it was mainly by letters that you could send or telegrams that you could send. So my dad knew that they were in India, and me and my dad were in Uganda. So he gets the readings saying that my mom had died And he was taken back, saying, "Oh, really?" And then about a few days later, the letter came saying, "Yes, sure, she had passed away."
So, after how many days did you get the letter? When
I can't remember. I was too young at that time to be told, but all I know that she'd passed away. So there we were in a quandary. My dad with two young boys, 1 8, 1 6, well, 1 5.5, as to what to do. So, in the Indian traditions, when the kids are little, the peer pressure is there for him to marry again. So he remarried. In a few months later, and about a year or so late, a few months later, my stepmother and my brother came over from India back to Uganda for us to be together. So that was back in late 65. I think they came over.
So, did your dad go to India for
Yeah,
the marriage?
he went off to when my mother passed away. My father went off to India, and at that time to do all the rituals and everything else.
Did you go with him?
No, I was left back in Uganda with my uncles and with his cousins and so on that were living there. So I stayed with the family effectively. Because when you're that young, it doesn't really matter. You have no clue as to what's happening in the wider world. So he goes back and gets married and comes back and said, okay. So when they come over to Uganda, they actually come by boat from Bombay to Mombasa, and we go and collect them from Mombasa. Me and my dad went over to Mombasa, picked them up, and brought my brother and my stepmother back to Uganda, and we stayed there until Idi Amin threw us out. But in the meantime, about a year or two later, about a couple of years after, my father calls my grandmother over, and then my grandmother is the one that has really looked after us for a long time. So she was the one who was instrumental in making sure that we got fed and properly and dressed up, etc. And she was the main instrument in everything else.
So, going back to your days in Mumbai, did you, because you said you moved there when you were about 6, you were there in
Mumbai?
In Mumbai?
No, in Mumbai I was born in just north of Mumbai.
Yes.
But our house was in Mumbai itself, so we were living in Mumbai. My mum went for her delivery to her parents' place. So they were all living together. My dad and mom and everybody was living in Mumbai. My dad was working in Mumbai. They go off. My mom was pregnant and she was due to give birth. She goes to her for the first baby. They go to the maternal place, and the maternal place is Bansda in India. And she gets I was born over there, and what my mom says, I was quite a hefty baby. I was 9.5 pounds, big baby. So and then she comes back to Ghatkopar, and we live there. The things I remember about Ghatkopar are quite interesting. When you're a child, you still have a few flashes of memory. The few flashes of memory that I have is that we had a communal well where there wasn't running water in the houses at that time. So everybody had to go to the well to get the water from there. So the well was just there. So probably about 5 minutes walking distance from the house. So everybody used to go there to the well, pick the water, and those for the bathing and everything else. The houses, because there were rows of houses, even the toilets were under communal toilets. And again, like in India, you had the toilets outside, and then you had the cubicles outside as well. So it was just that way around communal toilets and a communal well further up. And I remember functions like they were celebrating Diwali functions and Navratri functions. I remember playing Dandiya Ras when I was about 5, 6, with a couple of sticks. Uh, just, just like a child, just hitting the sticks together, not knowing what to do, and just going around the round. And Kathakali dancers used to come around. There was a little park type of thing, and they used to have some free shows that used to come up. Kathakali dancers, and they used to perform. So we used to go and see those. Just go there, sit down in the front, and look at them attentively, with all the eyes and the makeup and everything else. It was a fun time.
And what about your early education? Did it start in Mumbai?
It started in Mumbai as well, but quite often we used to go off to Kutch as well. So part of the education was in Kutch. It's all in Gujarati. And when you were little, you just get little bits of information. So over there, I used to remember going to the school. I can't remember anything about the school itself, but I can remember when I was in Kutch and going to the school. I was very fond of horses. So, and I usually used to make a fuss about going to schools. So when my grandfather had come back, he'd built a house in Kutch in a place called Adoy. So he'd built the house up, which is on the top of a hill. This isn't a massive hill, but it's a slight slope and a hill, and at the bottom of the hill was a river running by, and there's a really nice sandy stream that the river was running in. The water was absolutely beautiful, and us as kids used to go and bathe in the river while the women washed the clothes, and then made a well by the side of the river in the sand, and used a little bowl to scoop water into the little pots, the earthen pots, or the metal pots, to bring it back up the hill. The school was there, and I remember my neighbor sort of coming every morning to pick me up on his horse. So he used to say, "Right, come on, I'm taking you to school." So he used to pick me up, put me on the horse, and we used to go up to school in the morning. I used to sit in front of him, and he used to just take me to the school on a horse. And in the evening, I used to come back again, or not the evening, in the mid-afternoon, when the school finished. He used to bring me home again on this horse. It was a different era at that time, when there weren't many cars around in the village, and the travel between villages, again, either used to be on a horse or a bullock cart. So I remember going to one of the weddings in a nearby village on a bullock cart, sitting in the back with a lantern going around, and coming back after dark on the bullock cart going home.
So, so when did how did your education continued when you moved to Uganda?
When I moved to Uganda, what happened was the schools that I was put into was an English school. Everything was taught in English, and I had no clue about English. Neither did my brother. So we went to the schools, which was right close by us. When I say close by, it was only about 3 to 5 minute walking distance from the house. So over there they put you in by age group. So you go into the classes, you start up, and everything was in English. So my dad put a couple of got us to some private tuitions to learn English a little bit, at least the ABCs, etc. And that's how I built up.
And was your dad already good at English?
He was reasonable. He could talk a little bit in English. He wasn't very good, but he could get by. But there was he had a few Goan friends, and they helped me out by giving me some private lessons in English and getting me through. So I picked up English that way, and then once I picked up the basics of it, they left me alone, and I carried on in the school. So again, like in the primary schools over there, it's like at the age of 12, you have a set of exams that you have to do, and I sat those exams, went through those, passed through, and then went to the government school. Back in Uganda, the government schools were considered to be the top schools. And the private schools were where or rather the fee-paying schools were where people who were not very good or failed the exams, the parents used to send them there. So it was a topsy-turvy type of an environment. So I got into a good school because I got over 75% in both my subjects. So I got in a very good school. And when I was doing my O-levels over there, so I had to studied Gujarati there as well. Everything was in English, but Gujarati was taken as a secondary language. So I could study, read and write in Gujarati. So back studying over there, built up a few friends over there. And those friendships have still continued. There was 5 of us who used to sit at the back of the class. And since since 1969, those friendships are still there, and we're still in touch with each other. Some of the guys are in London, some are in the US, some are in India, but we still keep in touch all the time. And in 72, Idi Amin said, "Okay, bye-bye, guys." In August 72, and that's where we left Uganda.
Okay, so that made you leave Uganda. So
That's made us leave Uganda.
yeah, how many people were there in your family at that point of time?
At that time, it was my grandmother, my father, my stepmother, my mother. My brother, from my real brother, my stepbrother, and my stepsister, because my stepmother had 2 kids as well. So there was 7 of us altogether.
So
When they asked us to leave, my mother, the 2 brothers and sister, they left by plane from Entebbe. Because you could only carry certain amount of luggage, and the government had said you could only take £50 per head of family. So you were not allowed to take transfer any monies out of the country either. All the bank accounts were frozen and nothing could be transferred out. So my mother couldn't take any money out, but she managed to get a little pieces of jewelry out by putting it in her shoes and so on, and bringing them back out of the country and taking them to India. He then asked me and my grandmother to go by ship. So take a train from Uganda to Mombasa, and then from Mombasa to India. And then he said, I will go to UK, settle down, and then call you guys one at a time so that we can all be together in UK. So when I left Uganda by train...
how old were you at that point of time?
I was about 16 years old. So living in Uganda at the age of 16... going to the train station in Kampala, the army guys are there. When Idi Amin had taken over back in, I think, 69, 70, in that time, the army had come into power, and they were quite powerful at that time, and I'd seen a lot of bad things happen in the streets in Uganda. Bad things like people being knifed in the back by the army guys, people being beaten up with the rifles, with the hammers, sticks, stones, etc., with blood coming out of them. Seen lots of different things, which can be a bit gruesome as well. Like when I was young and playing cricket, one of our neighbours there, the servant had come home totally drunk. He beat up his wife, threw her out of the house, and then basically tied a rope in the ceiling and hung himself. So when you opened the door up in the morning, you could see him hanging from his neck. So those kind of images and all the sights that you see still linger in the background of your mind, and you can't get rid of them.
So,
Right.
how did the news of Idi Amin's decision was? How did you guys receive it?
Um, First of all, when he got the news, it was quite a bit of a shock to hear it, and nobody actually believed that it would happen. That he was just basically dreaming. He was quite an affable guy, in the sense that he was always laughing, joking, etc., and nobody could take him seriously. And then it dawned upon everyone that yes, he is actually serious, and there was a mad scramble for people to move out. So my father decided we'll settle in UK because of the schools and so on. And in his mind, education was the most important thing. So he said, no, we'll settle down in the UK. We'll go there. But he'd built the plan up so that he sends my mother, brother and sisters off to India first. Then me and my grandmother to India next with some luggage. So that we could, when we build up the house, we can start actually living there. When we left Uganda, getting into the train station, the army guys open our suitcases, and whatever they like, they take. There is no question about stopping them. But by the time we got there, they'd got taken so many things that some of these simple things, they just wouldn't. If it was not a good gold or shiny things or silvery things, they would just leave it alone and just pack the bags and say, all right, okay, off you go. So we took quite a few bits and pieces, including a double bed and some mattresses and pots and pans. And so we had 5 big trunks of stuff to take over. But the train itself, it's a 3-day journey from Kampala to Mombasa. But the train does not have any air conditioning. And that's saying that there's no buffet car on the train. No buffet car means that whatever food you want to eat for 3 days, you make it yourself at home, and you take it with you on the train, and you eat that food for the 3 days. Right? Remember, there's no fridges, air conditioning. Well, you open the train window, and that's your air conditioning. Then you're on the equator, so it's always hot. So you have to have non-perishable food. And at the end of the first day, or towards the end of the first day, the train reached a city called Tororo. And the train was due to stop for 1 hour only, but the army guys who were there just stopped the train for 6 hours. And then went systematically through the train and took whatever they wanted. So they took all the people who had the cash notes, they took that away. And they give you a little receipt, a little bit of paper, which doesn't have any date or anything else on it, saying 100 shillings or 500 shillings or whatever amount taken from this person, a scribbled signature, there you go. And they take the money. If they like the watches, they take it. Some of the women who had gold earrings, they said, right, take them off, or gold bangles, take them off. And if the women were struggling away, they would just snatch the earrings off their ears. So a few of the women had bleeding ears. And if some of the men who sort of tried to stand up to them, they got beaten up. Right, this is on the train. So they came through systematically. When they came to my compartment, they said, okay, all the men, there was 6 of us in the compartment, me, my grandmother, plus 4 others. Said, right, okay, all the men out of the compartment, only the ladies inside. And they searched through the bags there, searched through the wallets, took the money that they wanted, and the food that we had. They put their hand, because it was dry food, they put their hand in there and have a little rummage to make sure that there's nothing hidden underneath that. So at the end, after that, you don't feel like eating the food that you'd made. So when the train, and after they leave, you can go inside. So I remember stepping outside the cabin, and I took a black wallet out with me. And there's a couple of guys standing next to me. So I put the black wallet behind them, because in that black wallet my dad had given some watches for my aunts. So I held it behind those guys, so they didn't know what was in there. They searched everything, and then I went back inside. And nobody knew anything about the watches after that. So when we reached India, I actually managed to give the watches away. We actually managed to give the watches away to my aunts. But and when we left Tororo, after Tororo, we threw all the food out of the window, knowing full well that we had 2 more days to go. All we had was water. Right. But luck has it. Okay. But luck has it that the people in Kenya were well aware of what was happening, and they're actually prepared to welcome the trains. And that's where you appreciate humanity and the need for service. Those guys actually gave service to us. Because what they did was, they actually made basins of food, different curries, loaded them up on the trains. Said, right, share it among all of you. So in each of the big bogies that load a small container full of some curries, some puris, some dals, some rice. And so, right, okay, share this amongst yourself until you reach the next station. And that happened at each and every major station we stopped. So like Nakuru, Nairobi, and a couple of other stops in the middle. So that way you appreciate that, yeah, there are people in the world who will come to aid. The other thing that happened was there were doctors, right? Stop it.
So you were talking about there were doctors at the
Yeah.
station.
So when we reach out, that's the time you appreciate humanity and how good the human spirit is, and what humans can do and what man can do to man. On one hand, you witness the atrocities in Uganda. On the other hand, we were witnessing the kindness of people who were sort of loading out of their free hearts, creating the food, loading them up on the trains for us refugees to get through.
And were these local people?
They were just the local people.
And there was no army at these stations?
There was army and everything else. The police were there. Kenyan police were there. And what the Kenyan police used to say was, because there was a case of people could have got off the train and jumped the platform, that actually sealed the trains. So you could not get off the trains. You had to be on the train. Only the doors could be opened up by some of the people and loaded. The Kenyan police had told all the other people who were coming to visit that they need to keep 2 meters of distance or 2 yards of distance, so 6 feet of distance from the train, so that people cannot say hello or give something across from the people who had relations, etc., who might have come to see them. But the only people who were allowed on board were doctors and the people who were loading the food. And there were some embassy staff running around saying, "Are you from this place? Have you got this passport?" There's British embassy people running around. Do you have anybody with British passport? Anybody with British passports for any consular services? But most people had Indian passports on the train. And the doctors used to come on board and come into your compartment saying, "Oh, here's some packets. You'll need this. What's in it? It's just got aspirins, etc. You'll need this. Just keep a few packets." So they used to give a couple of packets. And then when the train went, you realize that those packets actually had a few shillings inside, a little bit of money. Right? Which means that when you're on the ship, you got some monies available. Right? Okay, you had some medicines, but you had some notes. that you could utilize. But the train actually went to Mombasa. When the train reached Mombasa, we didn't go into the Mombasa train station. The train just got diverted because the whole train was going off to, all the people in there were going off to India on the ship. The train just went straight to the dock. Yeah, so once we get onto the train, say onto the harbour, we get on board, and I make sure all our luggage is loaded up. I will count all the our trunks and the beddings and the double beds, etc. They're all loaded up, and we're happy. Got to Mumbai, and from there we went off to Baroda, where my aunt used to stay, and we stayed in Baroda for about a year and a bit. My mum, when she went to India, they went because they'd left before us. They'd gone to Goa, where her parents were living, and then about 6 months later, they came and joined us, and stayed with us for 6 months. And then by that time, a year had passed, and my dad had settled down in UK. My dad actually flew into UK and was living in a medical camp in Yeovil, and, one of the camps that the government had set up. And from there, he found a job in London, and was staying with an English family at that time, the local authorities and the UK government was very good, in the sense that they actually helped the Ugandan Asians to settle down quite nicely, which is a very good credit that I give to the government. They helped us quite a lot. At that time, they were giving us 100% mortgages, so my dad actually bought a house in London. And once he'd bought the house, my mother and the two brothers and sister joined my dad in London. And I said, well, I'll stay in India because my schooling was there.
So you stopped your schooling in Uganda?
I stopped my schooling in Uganda. When I left in Uganda, if I stayed there till the last day, I would not have been able to do my O-level exams. So there was no point in staying there. So I left in October of 72, and in October 82, and went off to India. In India, the term starts in June. So when I'd reached Baroda, they said, oh, no, it starts in summer, so you got 6 months. So what do I do for 6 months? Just roam around, and went with my cousin to his university and attended some lectures with him just to pass time. But in the meantime, because in India, you had to learn Hindi to get into an Indian university. So I actually started learning Hindi. And and then joined the school over there in Baroda. And up comes March, and my dad says, no, you got to come back to UK. It comes February, and my dad says, no, you got to come back to UK, because if you wait till all your exams, which are in May, you'll be over 18 at that time. And because you're over 18, you can't come in as my dependent. So he said, no, you got to come here before May. So I had to stop my studies back in India and didn't complete my O-levels there. Came back to UK in March, and the term in UK starts in September. So I had 6 months to do nothing. So I worked in a furniture factory, a summer job.
Which city was this in?
I came to UK 17th of March. 17th of March 74. So that's the time that after nearly a year and a half, the family was together. And I went to his college, and because I was over 18, I couldn't go to a school in this country. I had to go to what's called adult education centres to do the studies. And not all education centres offered all the subjects that you wanted to study. So I had to go to 3 different centres, some evening classes, to do my 6 subjects, 6 O-levels, and then did my A-levels, and then did my first degree in London. So I got pretty good grades in my A-levels. In my 2 years of A-levels that I did, so I did double maths and physics. But the teachers at that time said, no, you're really good at this. Why don't you sit for special papers as well? Because special papers are again, like A levels, but they were much harder, same syllabus, but much harder. And they again counted for A levels. So in the end, in the 2 years, I ended up with 5 A levels. And all of them were, apart from one paper, all of them were grade A's. And then I went to University College London to do my degree in electrical and electronic engineering. And it was quite strange because I'd always envisioned since the age of 14 that that's what I want to do. And my focus was always on electrical and electrical engineering. And that's what I ended up doing. So I achieved my degree, went to work, lived in London worked in London for a couple of years, and then went to Reading and worked for a small company that quite a few of people might know. It was called Digital at that time, but it's now been bought by HP. So effectively worked for HP, designing various things for computers, including a color graphic card that plugged inside a mainframe computer, disk drive controllers, tape drive controllers. We got into project management, product management, etc. And then the company moved down to, because the company was growing, Digital was growing quite big. It said it needed somewhere to move, a small autonomous department. Now my department was a small autonomous department, so they said, no, we're moving down to South Coast. At that time, I had a choice available, either to move to the US, because the US part of the company was saying, no, come over here, we'll give you a nice job and a car and everything else. I could have stayed back in Reading or moved to the South Coast. And my wife said, I prefer the South Coast because it's still closer to London and we can still go and see the family. Because in the US, where we were where I would have been in Nashua, New Hampshire, it does get very cold. One winter when I was there, I was telling her it was, with wind chill factor, it got down to minus 25 centigrade. So she said, no, I don't want to live in that kind of a cold. I want to live by the seaside. So that's why we chose Southampton, and that's how we came down here.
And which year that was?
That was back in 1988. We moved over here in Southampton. So moving to Southampton, again, we didn't actually live in Southampton. The work was my work office was in Whiteley. And so we lived in Lockheath. And used to come into Southampton now and then to buy some groceries and so on, but not much in Southampton. And even the temple, we didn't go to the temple that much, or not much communications with many people in Southampton, because most of the time we used to go off to London and the family functions, etc. We used to do over there. I always used to jest that my wife's side of the family is so big that even if somebody sneezes or catches a cold, 200 people will gather away quite quickly. So we were in the self bubble and didn't need to socialize too much. But that's one of the things that I regret a bit, of not getting my daughters more into the community side within Southampton. Because who knows what could have happened. They would have learnt our culture more, they would have learnt the language more, etc. But they were quite happy down in Lockheath area.
Well, taking you a little bit back, in the time when you said your dad was here, and you said he arrived in Yeovil first,
Yeah.
in the camps. How was his life in the camp? Do you have any idea what was it like?
I don't know, because he doesn't talk about it much. He said that the food was just very bland, the typical English foods that they could give, vegetarian type food. But he used to come down to London to find the job. A couple of times he came down to London, got the job. And what had happened was there was an English family called John and Sue Bowles. They had a couple of kids at that time. So they were looking to host somebody in London as well. So my father, the my father fitted their criteria bill, so my father went and stayed with them for a year, and they didn't charge any rent or anything else, and they gave him a room, and they all the food and everything else, and really looked after him quite well. So we owe John and Sue quite a big debt as well. Unfortunately, John has passed away now, but his wife Sue lives in Cambridge, and we're still in touch. Really nice lady. And although they had two kids, they wanted to adopt another kid, so they adopted an African child who didn't have any and brought him up as their own, and he's now also doing very well. So we are still in touch with those guys, and John used to be a very good guy. He actually lectured at Southampton University for a little while, so he came and stayed in Southampton, lectured at the Southampton Uni.
So after living in Yeovil and living with John and family, your father made his own house at?
We bought a house in Tottenham in London.
Okay.
It wasn't very far from this Tottenham Hotspur football ground. And that's basically the typical 3-bedroom house with lounge, kitchen, dining area. That's all we could afford, and we were comfortable in there.
So when you came from India, you came to this house?
Yeah, when I came to India, I came to that house.
Okay.
And all of us were living in that house for... My dad actually lived in that house till 1988, and then he bought another house in Oakwood. So they now live in Oakwood, in a lot bigger house, with my youngest brother and his family.
So, would you say that when you came to this house and all the family was together, you felt a bit relieved with all the ups and downs you had faced?
It felt like the family was complete at that time. You could have a sense of family life, because when I was in India, it was me and my grandmother, and we used to get the money sent over to us now and then, and we used to struggle our way through. And we used to write letters, because at that time there was no telephones available. It's not nice. Telephones weren't as common as now what they are now. So it wasn't very off. We didn't have a telephone in India. My dad didn't have a telephone he had a telephone in the house, but we couldn't actually ring up that easily. So it was the letters and so on. So when we came back, when we were all together, it felt like a family, but it felt strange in this way that it still felt a little bit disjointed, in the sense that you were never quite, the bonds weren't as strong as if you would have grown up together. So, like quite often you hear brothers and sisters calling each other every day, etc., and are in and out of their houses. With us, it's never been that way, because my family has been in London most of the time, and even with my brother, we were never too close with each other. My sisters, so all of us were sort of never got gelled together as a family. We were like more of an individuals, but still cared for each other. And my dad also cared in the sense that what he did was, he said, with everything that's happened in Uganda, I want you guys to study. Because when you study, that is the one thing that will always stay with you. No matter what happens, people cannot take away your education and the knowledge that you have gained. They can take away the money, they can take away everything else, but they can't take away your education. So he said, no, I want you guys to study. And some of his other friends were saying, why did you get them to work and study? My dad said, no. If I do that, then as soon as they start earning something, they'll think, oh, I've got a heavy pocket now. I don't need to worry about studying. I said, no. I won't make them work and study. I want them to study full time, and one thing that I'm really grateful, because my dad actually had a job during the daytime, and then he used to come home in the evening, and he used to do private work, like a second job, to repair other people's watches. So he used to sit in the house, in the room. He'd built up a little table where he'd sit and repair people's watches, and so it's like effectively two jobs that he was doing. And with that, and my stepmother was also working. So with that amount of money, we were able to run the family. And he still managed to achieve everything. So I finished my studies. My younger brother, he did his A levels in geography. He wasn't very good at studies, he thought. He said, I'll study, and did his O levels, then did a A level in geography, and then said, no, I don't want to study anymore, and I just want to go and work. And I remember pushing him quite a bit. So I remember, one day me and my dad, because my brother said, I've done geography, and he'd failed he got the lowest grade in geography, and said, no, I don't want to study anymore. I now want to just go and work. But I said, no, that's not the right attitude. What is it that you want in life? Do some other work, do some studies, what profession do you want to become? And he said, okay, I'll do a bit of accounts. Then he went and did OND, and we sort of sat him down in the sitting room one day, my dad and me, and pushed him so much that he actually cried that day. And he said, okay, I will study. And he went and did his OND in business, and then he went into accounts, and then did his HND, and then did his degree. And now he's a fully fledged chartered accountant with a practice in central London, which employs 8 people. So he's got quite a good chartered accountancy firm set up now, and pretty well off. So with those little pushing and the work and my dad's vision that no, the children in the family will study, and they will study full time. My brother's also one of the directors at what used to be part of Reuters, and my sister's one of the directors at a bank one of the project manager, director of what's the title? Director of global director of projects at one of the banks in London. So that was our family, and with my father's vision of pushing everybody to study, it actually meant that we are what we are now.
Yes. And, because you said a lot of study, let's go back to your childhood days. Apart from studying, do you remember like games where you guys used to play together, maybe in Uganda or Mumbai? Because, there's a lot of stress on study, but I'm sure you guys must have had a good time with playing with each other as kids as well.
Absolutely. The sports-wise, we were always into cricket and badminton. Where I was growing up in Uganda, I mean, in India, we used to, I can't remember too many games, but we had a little tricycle, and we used to sort of run around on a tricycle. But mostly I remember about Uganda. And Uganda, it was cricket and badminton. They were the two main sports. Badminton, we had at the house we were staying in, we had a badminton court in our front garden, and some of my friends also had badminton courts in their back garden, and some of them had floodlights in their back garden as well. Cricket, my father's cousin, or slightly distant cousin, he also played cricket quite at a very good level, and at one year he was the captain of Uganda's cricket team. So quite a lot of his friends used to come over, and we used to sort of knock around in the front garden with bat and ball. And every time in the evening he said, right, come on, throw some balls at me. And so I remember playing cricket and also going out on the match days when the cricket matches were on, into the stadium, Lugogo Stadium in Kampala. And with the teams like MCC coming over, used to get into the ground, and the members and the players uh, in the players' changing room, and then being able to get down on the ground and throw balls at the England international players who came down. So people like Mike Dinesh and so on, who came over. So you like, I can throw the ball, and he'd run around and throw the ball at them, and they would hit the ball quite far, and he'd go herring around chasing the ball. So yeah, so badminton and cricket were the two main passions for me. And even when I came down, but badminton was a one sport that I took up a lot more as I was growing up. So when I was at Tottenham Tech doing my A levels, I was really lucky at that time because my coach at that time the main coach was a Middlesex County player. He used to play for Middlesex County's 18. So he used to coach us, and then for 1 year he got another guy over who was a Malaysian international called Ang Tak Tuai. And that guy he now runs a badminton academy in Malaysia. So he gave us a lot of training. And with that, I reached this level where I could beat my coach, who was a Middlesex County player, quite often in singles. And even at uni, I captained and managed my university's badminton teams. And during my sports days, I won a few tournaments as well. But the best result I think I ever got was getting to the semi-finals, to the quarterfinals of Southeast England Technical College Championships, where I came up against, me and my partner came up against them on the other side, an England international and a Malaysian international player. Young England and younger Malaysian international players, and we lost to them 15-12, 15-10. So that's still a pretty good level. So I think I can say that I know which hand to hold a badminton racket.
Well, that's really good. And going back to one of more of your interesting stories, you mentioned about riding on a horseback to your school.
Mm.
What was mode of transports like while you were in Uganda?
Oh, Uganda, it was quite modern city. So in the first few years, first 2-3 years, it was basically taking the buses, etc., or just walking to people's houses because they didn't live very far from us. And then my dad bought a car, and then we had a car after that. So Uganda, it was quite nice that we had cars all the time, and we were able to travel everywhere by car.
Do you remember what car it was, the first one?
The first car was a Ford Prefect that he had, and then the second car, which was his pride and joy, was a Ford Anglia Super. I still remember that, and it came in his two favorite colors, which was the top was white, and the rest of the body was sky blue. So I still remember that car and the shape and everything, and that was his pride and joy, Ford Anglia.
And while we are talking about the first car and things, do you remember when did your family had the first television? Where was it?
The first television was back in Uganda at that time. I can't remember the year, but it was a few years later. It was a black and white TV. It was all black and white at that time, and we remember getting it. It was a small Toshiba TV. I think it was a 16-inch screen, or a 16 or an 18-inch TV screen at that time, and it was the programs didn't used to come all the time. It was only during the certain times and Saturday mornings. So I remember watching some of the children's programs, like some of the cartoon programs and some of the comedy programs that used to come. I used to remember Topper, the program called Topper, which was like a magician type program that used to come. But yeah, all those programs used to happen.
And can you remember something from those early days? I know there has been a lot of hardships, but some things which makes you laugh, like really laugh.
Oh yeah, the one thing that really makes me
I can
still makes me
imagine.
chuckle a little bit was one of our relations. We used to go and visit their houses quite a lot, and we all used to go on picnics. So I'd learned this thing from a guy in school. So he basically says, "Oh, I know this trick, I know this trick." So he said, "Look, I can make these things disappear, right? Look, I can make something happen in midair." So you sort of pinch your fingers and sort of take it around the person's face and go, yeah, abracadabra, and then raise the hand and then slap them on the face and run away. So I did that to my to a friend's daughter and just smacked her really hard and ran away. And so that was one of the funniest things I can remember.
And
But I don't think it was funny for her. But
and
as a child, it was like a prank that you could play.
and this was in Uganda.
That was in Uganda. It was way back, probably when I was about 11-ish, 10, 11-ish. Yeah, but it's humorous things like that. Um, again, some of the other things that happened, like used to get when we were little, when you were living in Uganda, there was still fear at that time that people used to steal cars. Those people used to steal cars' wheels and so on. You know, so then the bolts were created so that it was like special bolts so that standard spanners couldn't undo it. But not many people had that. One day we were going at the cinema. We were at the cinema, walking past the cinema in the late evening, and I saw these African guys trying to unscrew somebody's car tires, and we shouted at them, and they ran away. And then we thought that they were going to be coming after us, so we ran back quite quickly home, always fearing that they would be behind us. Remember that part. And then the other part I remember was also going to watch horror movies. And the Dracula films used to come down there at that time. And even at the age of 12, about 13, 14, I still remember going to watch the Dracula film in the cinemas and coming home and my neighbor saying, "All right, come, if you think you're not frightened, stand out in the dark or here in the..." And it didn't bother me. It's just stand out there in the dark without any fright.
So have you like watched only horror movies while growing up, or?
There used to be the Indian films that used to come. So we used to go and see the Indian films, quite a few of them. So the films like Aradhana, Rajesh Khanna was a big hit at that time. Mumtaz was a big hit. So we used to go and see those films there. Used to see the Western movies that used to come, Cowboys and Indians, and then used to go play games with the other kids.
Mhm.
Yeah, all those things do come into mind.
And coming back to a bit of future,
Right.
you came to Southampton for the work purpose, right?
For work
So
purposes.
what are your early memories about Southampton?
Early memories are basically Lockseath. We were very insular and just used to come to the temple now and then, because I always believed that God was everywhere. And why there's no point in going to the temple, because if God is everywhere, He's here in front of us. He's in the house. Why do you need to go to the temple? Don't need to go to the temple. And that's how we lived, and for about 12 odd years. And then suddenly something happened, and we started getting more and more into the Sai Baba things, because my wife started believing more in Sai Baba because of a few things that happened to her. And then having got into the Sai Baba's mode of teaching and the service aspect, that's when I sort of started thinking more about religion and teaching. So for the first 12 years, not a lot in Southampton, but then after that, from roughly 98 we got involved a bit more in the probably 99, 2000, got more involved in teaching at the temple. First running the Bal Vikas classes with a guy who'd founded the religious teachings at the Bal Vikas classes in Southampton. And he was the guy who founded it, and Rishi Sunak used to be our current Prime Minister, used to be one of his students. And then when he moved to India to offer his services to a hospital at an ashram, which was attached to an ashram free of charge, he asked us to run the classes for him. And that's how the interest and into service took over as well. Because I remember going back to Uganda days, how people had served us. So this was my way of giving back.
So, going back to the fact that you came Southampton when you had to come for the work, right? What was the city like? Were there many Indian restaurants and grocery stores, or because you were coming from London, right, where it was definitely a bigger city and more resources?
Yeah.
How was it in Southampton?
Southampton, we only used to come very occasionally, and only when we needed some things. So we used to come into St. Mary's area to buy some groceries, etc. But predominantly because we were going to London virtually every other week or every week, we used to just buy the vegetables from London and bring them over, or just basically buy these things locally. Southampton was not looked. We didn't used to venture too much into Southampton itself because the restaurants, my daughters were young at that time, and they didn't like to go to Indian restaurants too much, or other restaurants. They preferred to go to things like McDonald's and Italian restaurants. Was the main things. So we used to go out to places like pizza places, and some of the fast food places, and then go away to London quite a bit. But in Southampton, I can't remember going to Indian restaurants or other restaurants in the city. It was mainly basically just a convenience to come down to the temple, to a few shops, and just go on the Southampton High Road, going to some of the other shops like Woolworths that was on the main road, or some of the other shops that were on the main road, to buy the clothes, because there was no hedge end at that time. Whiteley didn't have any shops in either. The only big building in Whiteley was the building that my company was in. And it's only after that, after my company had moved in, that other houses and other developments started happening. So Southampton was the place where we used to come down to buy some of the clothes for the kids. Like we used to go to Toys R Us places to buy toys for the kids, and just basically just use it like as anybody would use it. Just the high street, being able to drive down it or walk down the high street from one shop to the other shops, buy the goods, and away you go. Didn't even venture into the harbour side either. So it was quite a shame that we didn't actually venture too much into Southampton, thinking now that we should have wandered more and more and brought the girls more, because there's a huge amount in Southampton that my girls would have loved to have been part of, had they known about what Southampton is like and the rich history it has. It's only now that I'm learning only in the past few years that I'm learning the rich history that Southampton has to offer. And that's only after having worked with the Southampton Council of Faiths, been part of the temple as a president, and other things.
So definitely you have seen a bit of Southampton. How much has it changed if you compare like Southampton today as it is as compared to what you saw?
Huge amount. Before you could sort of, where the precinct is in the Southampton, West Quay wasn't there, Marlins wasn't there. There was just basically rows of shops, Primark, etc. They weren't there. So you had things like Woolworths there, Marks and Spencer's there. Banks were there, so you could just do the banking, etc. it's, it has changed quite a bit. The ferry ports, I can't even remember for the ferry ports what they would have looked like. I remember Ocean Village opening many, many years ago, and that was a big thing because wow, Ocean Village, you got places to go there, you got shops, and you got a cinema there. So that was quite a revelation that it was a nice place to go and have a wander around and go to the cinema. The leisure world complex hadn't developed, so all those things weren't there, and it was totally. It felt like a town at that time rather than a city.
Okay, now altogether a different thing to talk about, because you have traveled through so many, situations and countries. What do you feel about the culture you got to see in different countries, and how did you manage to, carry on your faith and belief in that?
You asked me about different countries and so on. I've been really lucky in one way. Really lucky in one way in the sense that because of my work, I've traveled most of the world. Right. There's not many countries that I now want to go and visit left. So when I say most of the countries in the world, there's only one country in Europe that I've not been to. There's only about 3 or 4 countries in Asia that I haven't been to. In Middle East, there's only a few countries that I've not been to. There's a few countries that I don't really want to go to either. And then there are a few countries that I would like to go to, but do I really feel like going to them? No. Do I have the need to go to them? No. Maybe sometime later in the future, yes. Maybe I might go to South America to see the Inca and the Inca civilization part. But that's about it. But throughout the whole time, when I was traveling, it was quite difficult in the early days to get vegetarian meals, especially in Europe and in the middle of France or middle of Germany. Vegetarian? No. Nothing, no concept about vegetarianism. Even now, there's not much concept about vegetarianism in the middle of some place in the middle of France. So you ate everything and drank everything, but you still kept roots of who you were. And after I got more into the religious side of the teachings and saying, okay, guys, it actually says that if you stop abstaining from meat and alcohol, it'll help you progress spiritually. It doesn't say you should avoid it completely, but if you stop it, you can. And I thought to myself at that time, my God, I've been really bad all these years. I've not prayed. I've not done this. I've not done that. So I really need to become vegetarian and cut out all the alcohol. I mean, the companies that I worked for, you could put any bill you wanted for a night's entertainment, and it would go through. If you're entertaining a customer, you could put I'll put a £800 bill into as an expense for a night's entertainment, and it's gone through. Right. And drinks wise, there was nothing to stop you drinking as much as you wanted. And in some of the places, it was quite encouraged for you to drink with customers, to take them out for a good night out. And even like when I used to go to South Korea, and you're taking customers out, you'd average after dinner, drinks with dinner and so on, you average at roughly about 3/4 to a 3/4 of a bottle of whiskey per person for the evening. You think that's what you average at, and those guys would drink it quite happily. But you still kept the roots, saying, no, I'll stick with my roots, to say, no, I'm a teetotaler now, and I'll stick to my fruit juices because I want to progress more. So you maintain the cultural side, and you don't give up that side, because the roots that you got one of the things that Baba said that are memories. No matter what you are, if you're a Hindu, be a better Hindu. If you're a Christian, be a better Christian. If you're whatever religion you are, be a better at that religion. And the roots of Hinduism have stuck with me, and therefore I can say that to be a better Hindu is to serve the community and give your time for the community, because the community is the thing that helped me in the hour of need, and it's the thing that's helping. It'll help others as well in their hours of need.
So I've got a couple more questions before we can finish this off. That having seen so much in your life, what would you say would be your last memory of home?
Depends upon how you mean home. For me, home is everywhere. I've lived in India, I've lived in Uganda, I've lived in this country, in London, in Reading, and in Southampton. I lived in the US. Right? Home is where people are and where you feel comfortable. The last memory of Southampton is always going to be a great place to be, a great city, a great culture where I've learned a lot about myself, and where it's grown me up a bit more, and where I've got more affinity and not affinity. I've had the opportunity to serve to others what others have served to me in my hour of need. I hope I've been able to help them a little bit, which is the memory that I'd like to take.
And this might be a tricky one, that any moment from your past, any incidents which you think you want to relive again, or the other extreme, you think that it should never have happened? Or you can give me both.
I've got loads of examples of where I could have given of those things. Things that should not have happened. I can take it as a positive and a negative about living Uganda, right? Or for Idi Amin's, right? When he expelled us from Uganda, we were comfortable down there, and if he hadn't expelled us from Uganda, we would still have been there. I would have grown up there. I would have been working there. I would have had my life there, and I'm sure it would have been a comfortable life. So, him expelling us can be seen as a brutal part, because you saw loads of violence and everything else, and you saw what a man can do to a fellow man, the atrocities that can be committed, as well as the good side of what man can do to man to help them in the hour of need, like what they did to us when we were traveling from Kampala to Mombasa, and also in India. How much help people are giving, and how people are giving. You see that side of the fence as well. So both examples are there. I don't know whether I would have. I can say that I would have liked to relive it, but it's there. It's fresh in the memory, and I'm living all those experiences every time I speak. And the emotions as well. The emotions are also there, because when you have the vivid memory of everything, you're also always reliving those things.
Very true. So we are almost towards the end of our interview, and I would like to ask a few more questions if you have time. So now the young generations who are coming to the UK, to Southampton in particular, do you have any messages for them? Like, obviously the city has changed a lot since you came here for the first time. So what message would you like them to give to them about the city?
Right. The cities of Southampton offers a lot. It's a main city. You have the forests quite close by. You have the sea quite close. You have the ferries that are quite close, where you can take really incredible cruises from. You got other big cities close by as well. You got London metropolis close by as well. You come to a place where it's really, really nice. The connecting roads to the world are here. Enjoy Southampton. Whatever you are, whatever nationality you are, or whatever religion or beliefs you have, just be better at that. And the one thing you should always remember is helping in the community. So it doesn't matter what you do, right? Whether it's helping the churches, mosques, gurudwaras, temples, just help, offer services, do some simple work, help others to settle down in the country as well. Like others will help you to settle down. Try and form a bondage and treat this as an opportunity to build a community together in Southampton, because Southampton has a lot to offer everyone, not just to a certain sect of minority groups. It has everything to offer. Just do the service work and you will be rewarded with lots of good things in your life.
Well, thank you so much for that beautiful message, Raviji. And just one more question has popped up in my mind. I was just, kind of replaying your whole journey in my mind, and it came to me that you definitely went from Mombasa to India before coming to UK. So how were you guys received in India? What was the reaction of the people there knowing what has happened?
It was quite strange you say that, you bring that up, because that's going from Mombasa to India. It's a 9-day journey. So we landed in Mumbai. All the luggage was taken off the ship, and I noticed that there was 2 trunks that didn't turn up. Right, 2 trunks didn't turn up. I fully knew that all the luggage that I'd taken had been loaded up on the ship. So they should have been on the ship. Nothing would have fallen off because they were in the hold. So having got off the ship, collected all my luggage and everything else together, 2 trunks were still missing. So I go back up in the ship again, go into the hold, and what happens is those 2 trunks were kept away in one corner of the ship, in the luggage compartment. And they were removing all the other luggage, but those 2 trunks were kept in a different place because the trunks were a little bit heavier on one side than the other. So I would imagine that somebody might have thought that there's something good in that trunks. So keep them on one side, and they won't know because these are the refugees. They could have got lost somewhere else. So I said, no, get these trunks off. They're mine. I want them off. And this is at the age of 16. I got the guys to load the trunks back onto the cargo nets and then take them down out of the ship. Again, the Indian government was reasonable in the sense that there is only a certain amount they can do. So they put us up overnight to somewhere else in one of the centers, and then gave us a ticket to wherever we wanted to go for our onward journey in India at the government's cost. So that was quite nice of the government to do that. But as far as resettling part is concerned, no, nothing. You just they give you a ticket and then you fend for yourself. So we were quite lucky that my aunt was there to help us in Baroda, and she'd come over to receive us. So we were able to stay with her for a couple of months, and then we settled down there. So the journey was different.
And another question has popped up about the aspirin packets which the doctors gave you.
Mm-hmm.
How did that come handy later?
Well, on the ship, there wasn't anything to buy because the food, etc., is always there. You were given breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and the mid-morning snack and afternoon snacks as well. At the age of 16, I didn't. There was nothing about smoking or gambling or anything else. Some of the people who liked a cigarette or something, it came in handy because they were able to buy the cigarettes over there on the ship and carry on, because they would have run out otherwise. They can't carry everything. So it came in handy for those guys. But for us, It was just a small packet for with a few shillings, uh, and that was just appreciating the humanity and what humanity can do for you. That always brings a lump to the back of the
It
throat.
does. It does. Even, when I'm thinking about it, it makes me also a bit emotional to, the extremes
Mm.
a person can do.
Yeah, and in that one journey, in that one single journey from from Kampala train station to Mombasa port, we were able to see both the extremes that a human can do to another, a fellow human can do to another fellow human.
I'm sure you have talked about this journey to your family also. What do they feel about it? Like your younger generation. If you tell them about this, what's their take?
I haven't told them fully yet,
Okay.
and my daughter has actually bought me. It's quite strange. My daughters want me to write it down. So they said, Dad, now that you retired, so they bought me a Mont Blanc fountain pen. And said, Dad, this is your present. Now write your story. So that's what I intend to do.
That's great. And do you have a title for it?
No, nothing yet.
I'm sure it's a bit difficult to summarize so vast in just one title, right?
It is.
Yeah. So, what final message would you like to share with the people of Southampton and your journey?
Final message would always be a very big thank you to Southampton. Because what I am today and what I've been able to achieve in Southampton is because of the support and the love of the people that I work with in Southampton. In the temple, a lot of love and respect has been received from them. Council of Faiths, the mayor's parlours, they worked with lots of different mayors as part of their advisory roles, with the police, chief constables, etc. And again, same thing with the Unity 101 radio station. The amount of work that I've done with Kelly, and the amount of work, I think if I was to live more in Southampton, the work that we'll carry on doing, it's always going to stay with me. And the biggest thank you is to Southampton and with all the people that I worked with in Southampton, that they are the people that have made me what I am today. So a big thank you to all.
And thank you so much, Raviji, for your time and sharing your journey with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.